Welcome back, crew. Today we're going to be diving into one of the most highly contested arguments within the TTRPG space. Do you go with mechanics light or mechanics heavy? Do you go with the fiction first, or do you go with a world that is supported by the mechanics? So, before we dive into that, this is one of the ones you can really stick your foot into. I'll give you a little bit of my perspective before we dive into some of the pluses, minuses, and kind of just how to determine what's right for you and how what I think about both of them. Uh, with my gaming, I pretty much play the spectrum. I like Mechanics Light. Blades in the Dark, I had a blast with that game. To see it pictured before me, it's just really, it's one of those ones that's fast moving, it's quick. The fiction comes first, and you could really just dive into it without having a ton of prep to build your PC. Usually, with the Mechanics Light ones, it's usually easier to get your PC created and dive into the fiction and dive into the fun. You can kind of go along with that and just really tell some amazing stories with it. Now, on the other hand, I love mechanics heavy, and if I had to give a true or maybe first love on that side, mechanics heavy is definitely where my heart is. You saw that with the Lancer system, but I picked Pathfinder behind because that's definitely one of the ones where I feel like with some good mechanics, Pathfinder and Paizo stand out to me on that side. But that's just really some fun. You can go in there, you can go in, build an intricate PC that does interacts with the worlds and the rules that are set by the world, and does amazing things through those interactions. And one of the nice things I like with the mechanics pieces, we're going to kind of go into all of this a little bit more depth. But when you do something with like mechanics heavy system like Pathfinder, Lancer, to a lesser extent 5e, when you get that execute that perfect plan or get that perfect maneuver off, you've done it within the rules. You've went through. You've reacted to the world as it's set, and nothing kind of aided you along. The fiction didn't propel you forward. You made those things happen through your planning and forethought, which I always enjoy. It lets you tell some fun stories on that side too. But a lot of people say I kind of lean one way or the other, and some people are diehards, or they only play fiction light or play fiction heavy. I like to play it all, and it kind of determines a few big things on which system I'd want to play for the game or the story I'm trying to tell. And I think the biggest piece for me is genre, because genre is crucial, at least for me, for choosing the type of game I want. Usually, so let's pick Blades in the Dark. For a heist type game, I think Mechanics Light is the way to go because if you try to run a heist with 5e, I never tried to run a heist with Pathfinder, but with 5e, you can just get caught in details that are inconsequential, and sometimes, and it's one of those ones where the heist, where it's supposed to be fast moving, quick, and zany, where the mechanics feel like they're interrupting the story. In my view, the mechanics shouldn't feel like they're interrupting the story, they should be enhancing the story. So for a heist, I'd never pick mechanics heavy. Pick one that's light that you can kind of flow through, keep everything moving, keep the story, the action, the suspense building with twists and turns. And I think mechanics light is the best way to go about it. Now on the other side, I'm going to pick on Blades of the Dark a little bit for whether they're their sister books, Scum and Villainy. Science fiction. I don't like mechanics light for science fiction. Science fiction is one of the ones I feel like the world should have rules. It should have mechanics and rules to kind of really build it out, which is why, like when I like to start science fiction, I like Star Wars 5e, Starfinder. I want something that has the world built out, crunchy, that you could dive into and make things happen. It's just for me, and this is kind of one of my own preferences. I know a lot of people love Scum and Villainy, and I had some fun playing it myself too. But I like to have that crunch, that build when going through the science fiction game. And this is all to say though, just with the genre. So if you're going through it, you're kind of determining what you want to play. Kind of take a look at the story and the genre you're telling. For me, science fiction worlds deserve the crunch, but if you're playing a heist, it's low fiction, and it's kind of determine where on the spectrum your genre, your game is going to fit, and kind of which one will, and kind of ask yourself the core question: will the mechanics support this, or will they get in the way of it? And that'll let you know if the mechanics get in the way, go mechanics light. If the mechanics will support that, go as mechanics heavy as they still support. Just so, just don't let yourself get locked into having and liking one system so much, you try to make it everything. So I'm going to pick up my 5e players a little bit, and I play 5e quite a bit myself, but don't try to make a system do everything for you, because otherwise it will feel like it's just failing you. Sometimes it's great to go to the mechanics heavy game, sometimes it's good to go to the mechanics light. Just know what you're trying to do, and then build it out, and let that story flow along with it. So, on that side, we touched on the genre piece. The other piece I think is also crucial for determining what system to play is what will your players allow you to play? And so if you're the game master here, the hardest part for systems outside of 5e is finding players that are willing to give that system a shot. So if you are going to be choosing mechanics heavy game, especially, you got to make sure your players are on board for the mechanics heavy. I love mechanics heavy games, but sometimes your players are just in the mood for beer and pretzels, and it can be hard to get them to buy into the mechanics, learn the mechanics, and actually get a fulfilling game utilizing the system's mechanics. Because if you're going to use the mechanics heavy game, but they're only going to scratch the surface, people are usually going to be unfulfilled and wondering why they didn't play something else. On the flip side, too, for mechanics light games, know your players. If you get a guy that's an optimizer, or just really loves to dive into the gears and levers of the world and figure out how to best pull them to tell his story, they may be a little bit bored during some mechanics light games, or they may. Because sometimes even when I enjoy the mechanics light, but sometimes it can feel like, and I kind of felt this a lot during Scum and Villainy, is that you just don't feel like you're actually doing the things that are happening. For science fiction, I like this crunch because if you go through and steal a starship and kind of pilot your way through an asteroid field, you want to have some. I like some mechanics to support that. I don't want it all to be down to a D6 roll. So it just kind of depends. So make sure you're lining up with your players on that side and make sure they know what they're getting into. And if you get those mechanics guys who like to have the crunch, maybe kind of a compromise and go to a more mechanically heavy game that still fits that genre that you're telling. On the flip side, if you get guys that just don't want to dive into mechanics, but you got some mechanics you want to go in there, try to meet in the middle and find a mechanics light game that does what you needed to do to tell your story. So we've touched on genre, we've touched on your players. I think the last big thing that you need to consider if you decide between mechanics light versus mechanics heavy is the length of the campaign. And I know this is kind of a weird one to throw in there, but I feel like sometimes with the mechanics light games, having a long campaign with them may not always flow the best. It may be better with mechanics heavy. Usually, you have more level progression, more things you can kind of go and do, and even though I put Blades in the Dark as mechanics light up here, it's probably mechanics mid. This is definitely Blades in the Dark will probably be the exception to the rule on this side because it feels like there's a lot to do there with crews and all of that and advancing your own PC that can kind of keep it going. But some other mechanics light games I've seen, I'll pick on Into the Odd, Karen, just some of those other ones that have come up. It doesn't feel like there's always enough in there that you may eventually just get a little bit bored or just may not feel like your character in the world are advancing with you. Where mechanics heavy games, for longer campaigns, you have those level progressions, there's different things you can buy and equip your character with and just do that it feels like the campaign is always progressing, you're always building. But that's just my thought. That's why I put that one last. I feel like that's just my most personal opinion on what we discussed so far. But overall, I always encourage people to play a lot of different systems. Go through and play the system so you can find what you like and kind of what stories you want to tell with it. Because a lot of people within the TTRPG space, 5e is kind of the magnet that draws them in, but the magnet that keeps them stuck. Because I love 5e, but sometimes I've heard so many horror stories on Reddit, Twitter, with people trying to make it do something that it can't do. So play a lot of TTRPGs, play some mechanics heavy, play some mechanics light, find where you are on that spectrum, and then go through and find when you're making a new game, figure out what genre you want to tell, what story you want to go, or what genre you want to be in, what story you want to tell. Find what your players are interested in, kind of where they lean to on the spectrum, and then think about the length of your campaign, what you want this campaign to do, what the campaign to accomplish, and then go through and decide the game. Find where you want to be on the spectrum. Do you want to be Blades of the Dark, doing some cool heist? Do you want to be Pathfinder, going through a fantasy world that's mechanically fleshed out where you can find rules that support the gameplay style that you want to be? Or do you want to be something completely different? But just go through and make that choice informed and kind of make sure that you know what you're deciding when you go through it. So, friends, this was a quick video on this side. Just wanted to go into a little bit of my thoughts on this. I've been thinking about this recently with some of the games I've been playing and wanted to just throw it out there. Hopefully you found something you enjoyed or learned something new or just had some fun as we were having a little bit of a chat. But if you're new to the channel, please like, subscribe. Each month we pick a new tabletop RPG and we dive into it. This month we are diving into End of the Odd. Check out some of our videos we've got posted. And join us for our actual play of the End of the Odd system October 12th at 7 p.m. We'll be raffling off a copy of the PDF for the End of the Odd game. as well as just showcasing the system and all of its amazing goodness. But thank you guys for hanging out and listening to me ramble a bit. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and until next time.